Chapter 16. I rushed out the room to find the first aid kit, no matter how much my logic told me not to. My feet wouldn't stop and I couldn't stop them even if I wanted to. I went into the bathroom and opened the cabinets under the sink, looked for the tweezers as well. Once I was sure that I got everything I would need, I rushed back to my room. Jeff was lying on the floor in a puddle of his own blood. I slowly set the kit next to him and opened the window. I sat down next to him, opening the kit. "What the fuck are you doing?" he asked through raged breaths. "Just shut up and let me do my thing," I told him. I said to him. He did shut up, which made me somewhat happy. "Give me your arm," I said, holding out my hand while I tried to find something to put pressure around the wound. He grunted and moved so he could reach out to me. I found something that is usually used for workouts, but it would have to do. I grabbed his arm and tied the things tightly above the wound. I took a deep breath, knowing I'd have to work quickly. I washed the wound as he screamed loudly from disinfectant. Once I had the wound cleaned, I grabbed the tweezers with shaky hands and held onto his arm tightly. "Don't you dare move, okay?" I said quietly and reached the tweezers into the wound after cleaning them. He screamed loudly and I heard the sirens from outside, probably only a couple streets away. The second I found the bullet, I quickly pulled it out. He screamed again, but stopped when it was out. He looked at me as sweat dripped down his face. I put the bloody bullet and tweezers down on a napkin and grabbed some bandages. I wrapped it around his wound and took off the thing I was using to stop the flow to his arm. I stood up and found some perfume I brought with me because my mom's suitcase was full. I sprayed it all over Jeff and the blood on the carpet, trying to mask his scent a little. He groaned as I sprayed him and helped him up. He glared at me as I helped him over the window, and he growled at me and I glared at him. "I know you don't like me, but if you want to get away, you'll have to bear with me for a while, Mr. Asshole," I said. He shut up and focused on getting out the window. He landed on his feet, but then fell into the ground with a grunt. I jumped out after him and landed oddly on one of my feet, and a sharp pain shot through me, but I ignored it as I got to my feet. I grabbed him by the arm and helped him up. He got to his feet, and we started to walk to the forest. When I could tell that the police were here by the now loud sirens, I grabbed his hand and started running. I burst into the woods, pulling him behind me, trying to ignore the piercing pain in my ankle. I began to slow down as the pain began to overtake my ankle, making it clear I sprained it. Just as I was about to stop, Jeff got in front of me and pulled me along with his full strength. I held back a scream of pain as we ran, and in fact, it was then that my logic started to sink in. I was running away. I helped him, and I tried to heal him. If anyone found out, I'd be put down as an accomplice. I tried to shake off my logic since I was running for my damn life right now. I followed Jeff in a haze and didn't try to think, just observed my surroundings. Before long, it began raining, and Jeff slowed down greatly and looked back at me. He slowed to a stop, and I collapsed onto the ground from the pain in my ankle. I looked up at him hopefully, and he reached down and pulled me back onto my feet. "Don't be a wimp," he said, and started to pull me along as I limped. I understood why he was saying it too. It made sense. He just got shot after all. We kept walking in rain for who knows how long, and the reason why our pace was slow was because it makes it harder for dogs to track us once it starts raining. After a while, the pain was too much and I stopped. He turned around and looked at me. He looked down at my swollen ankle and he grabbed my arm. He put it over his shoulder as he wrapped one of his arms around my back. I began to hop as he walked to my pace. After a while, when we made it to the cave, he helped me onto the floor and he took off his hoodie. I was honestly surprised to see a dry tank top underneath. He took that off too and placed it on the floor of the cave. He then somehow got a wet stick from outside and lit the tank top on fire. I was about to question him when he sat down next to me and just watched me. It was obvious that he knew I had plenty of questions that he had no answers to, but I was going to ask anyways. "Why didn't you leave me when you saw I had a swollen ankle? It would have been easier for you," I asked as he looked towards the fire. He was silent for a while before answering me slowly. "Because he liked you," he said. I raised an eyebrow as he turned to look at me. "Who?" I asked. I was curious to know more than anything. My brother, Lou. I honestly couldn't tell it was you before, but now. He said, turning away, clearly upset in some way. I tried to buzz my memory, and when I remembered the name, I felt myself enter complete shock. You killed Lou? You fucking bastard! I yelled as I began punching him. I could tell that I still liked him from when I was immature and illogical. After a while, I stopped and began crying silently. I leaned onto his shoulder, my fist laying on the ground. I cried into his shoulder as he sat there emotionless about this. Do you not care about him? I asked through sobs. He stayed silent for a while, then looked down at my face. I knew I probably looked horrible, with tears running down my face, but his face was blank. In fact, he looked happy, but that's probably because of a smile he carved into his face. I did. But how can I care for anything if I'll just... Never mind. He said, pushing me away and going to sit on the other side of the fire. He lay down on the cold stone and faced his back to the fire. After a few minutes of silence, I lay down as well, and watched the fire while I slowly drifted to sleep to the sound of fire and the rain outside the cave. Chapter 17. I woke up from a horrible night's sleep on the cold cave floor. It took a minute to take in my surroundings before I sat up and looked around the cave that was my sleeping arrangements the previous night. I looked where Jeff had been last night to see that he disappeared. I stood up and began to walk out into the cold forest that surrounded the cave. Jeff sat not too far away from the entrance, and when I walked out he immediately noticed me. My ankle was definitely better than it was last night, but it was gonna hurt like hell if I keep walking on it. I sat down next to Jeff and took in the sweet fresh air of the forest. He watched me silently for a while, and I quickly got an odd sense of tranquility. Why did you help me? He suddenly asked. I turned my head towards him, and he continued to look out at the forest. I thought for a few moments, but nothing came to mind. I honestly don't know, I said. He looked at me with a questioning look. Really? You don't know why you helped a man that had been trying to kill you for a few moments before? He exclaimed. I looked away from him, knowing I would yell, but that would only provoke him. It was probably just instinct, so shut up, I said, looking back at him. He growled at me and then smirked. Well, you always seem to have a bad instinct, he said, chuckling. I raised an eyebrow at him and crossed my arms. Oh, really? How is my instinct so horrible? I asked. He laughed and threw his head back against the stone of the cave. Oh, too many things to count. For instance, when I first went to kill you, if you hadn't opened that loud window, I probably wouldn't have found you, he said, snickering. I let out a huff and turned my head away. He laughed again as I tried to think of a comeback as quickly as I could. Just shut up, I exclaimed, and I heard him laugh harder next to me. I looked at him with the corner of my eye and watched as he wiped tears from his eye. Okay, Miss Teenager, he said, and I glared at him as he looked out at the trees, an odd twinkle in his eyes. I looked away, a sigh escaping my lips as I looked out at the trees. The air around us once again filled with that nice silence that's hard to find. For some reason, I was less anxious listening to the rustling trees, branches, and birds singing. I leaned my head against the stone cave and closed my eyes lightly. It was very comforting to be able to sit here with little to nothing to worry about. I heard the rustling of dry leaves next to me, and opened my eyes to see Jeff standing up and glaring into the trees. He turned his head, and he looked, and his eyes suddenly darted to me. We have to move. Now, he said urgently. I looked at him, bewildered by the urgency sound in his voice. I sat up straighter, eager to know why we had to go so suddenly. Why? Is there something wrong? I asked. He walked over to me and pulled me to my feet, wrapping my arm over his shoulder. No. But if we don't move, at least one of us will die, he said. The way he said it sent chills down my spine, and I noticed that the birds suddenly stopped singing. I looked around at the bare treetops as we began walking through the woods. As I began to twist, trying to find the source of Jeff's urgency, Jeff snarled at me. "Stop looking around. If you see him, I'm leaving you here to die because it'll be your fault," he said harshly, picking up his pace. I looked at him, fear starting to find its way through my mind. "Someone's following us?" I asked. Hearing the trembling in my voice, he kept looking ahead and stayed quiet for a little while longer. "Not you. More me than anything. After I almost beat his fucking ass, he's been following me when I go into the woods," he explained. However, that wasn't enough for me. If anything, that made my fears skyrocket. "Who is following us?" I exclaimed loudly. He glared at me and picked me up, throwing me over his shoulders. "Either look at the ground or close your eyes and you won't find out," he said. I looked down at the dry ground, my heart beating loudly against my chest. As I started to listen more carefully, occasionally I would hear the distant sound of static in my ears. I'm guessing Jeff heard it too, because after a while, when the sound became constant, he burst into a sprint. I closed my eyes tightly, not wanting to see whatever was causing the static. However, it slowly got overwhelming. My head started to spin, and I could no longer place any noise. After a while, it began to be too much, and I just slumped against Jeff's back. "Fuck!" I heard him exclaim before he came to a stop, and I was thrown onto the ground. After I hit the ground, the static came back full force, and everything seemed to go black in my head. I remember the time I got sick. I think I was about 7, maybe 6. I honestly can't remember the name of the dang thing, but it wasn't something my parents took lightly. From what I don't know, it was a rare illness in children that has only been cured twice out of, I think, hundreds. Anyway, I remember not wanting to move, not wanting to eat, not wanting anything. I was in a lot of pain. My head was constantly, and nothing they did helped. After one time when they tried to do a treatment that had hurt many times before, I lashed out at the nurses and screamed until my throat was sore. They kept doing the treatment, but it was when I was asleep. My parents would hardly visit because they were busy doing overtime so they could keep me in the hospital. When they did visit, it was brief, and I cried every time they had to leave. They were never there at the same time, but they would try to find time at least once a week for one of them to visit me. I became friends with the boy I shared my room with. He had blood cancer from what I remember, and he was my only real company, at least until he was cured. When he was gone, I was lonely and tried to find a friend among the nurses. However, they were too busy most of the time to even pay any mind to what I was saying. I burst into tears at one point because no one would talk to me. When school started again, my parents enrolled me into charter school instead. They still wanted me to learn and didn't want my education to be abandoned in case I survived. I worked around school for a while, and I think by the time the school year ended, my father had gotten a big enough promotion that my mom was able to come out of work. She taught me things I didn't know, got me an iPad when they came out so I could do something else when I wasn't learning. She spent every day with me, and when she could, nights too. My dad slowly got more time to spend with me too, and I thought that it was going to get better. That's when I started getting worse. The day I turned 9 years old, I seemed to be getting better when overnight my condition worsened drastically. My life was thrown into a turmoil as I no longer could see my parents, and it was hard to even breathe for me. I was shut out from everything. The only comfort I had was the coming and going of nurses. Me and I was still alive somehow. I did slowly get better after nearly 9 months stuck in bed and punctured with needles. Everything wasn't okay. It was only slightly better. I was still in pain, and as an almost 10-year-old girl, I would have rather died at that point. However, my parents kept me alive. They were happy when I couldn't be, and were there when I couldn't keep together. Finally, after nearly 8 years stuck in a white hospital room, the doctor announced I was pretty much cured, and I remember crying so hard. I was so happy because I had spent the past 8 years suffering through pain and depression. My parents spoiled me with books and so many things I couldn't have in the hospital. I was happy, and I had met a boy. It seemed all perfect. I decided I'd forget about the hospital and live a happier life than I did. But life was cruel, and I was thrown through another loop when my crush died. It's so hard not to cry sometimes. But life isn't always a box of chocolates. I know that now. For me, it might never be. I might never be able to live happily. But if I do, they'll probably be the best moments of my life. Hey guys, Kira here today. So I had a little mix up today. Just let's try not to judge each other here. So I was watching the new video from Dan and Phil Games, their Pokemon one, and I was reading in the comments, and there was like a little surprise link. Well, I went to that, and I had to sign in into Google Plus, whatnot. Well, it asked me if I wanted to change my username from Beautiful Kind of Crazy to something else. Well, I've been using Crazy Kira for quite a few things as my username. So, putting that in, not thinking that it would change anything, it accidentally changed my username on this YouTube channel, which is just fantastic because I didn't want it to. So, I know this is like the 5th time I've changed my username. For those of you out there who have been kind of watching my channel, if you have, you probably already know this is like the 5th time I've changed it. I swear it's not on purpose. It's... I did not mean to. I really didn't. So, of course, with that whole mix-up, it's now Crazy Kira. Hey. Anyways, I'm coming out with a lot more stories. I've been getting messages from authors lately that I've asked for their stories, and they're coming out soon. I'm so happy. I just wanted to honestly thank all the authors out there for letting me use all their stories, and full credit to you guys. Also, links, of course. There will be music credits to Mayu, I hope I said that right, and Adrian von Ziegler. I love his background, like Viking music that he likes to do, and I absolutely enjoy it. And also, guys, I may or may not stick to creepypasta. I'm just giving that fair warning right now, because like, I love creepypasta. I've known creepypasta for about 3 years, and I've absolutely fell in love with them since day one. So, but since times are kind of changing, yada yada, and I know that a lot of people are into a lot of different things, and kind of so am I. With the Dan and Phil, yeah. I'm actually planning to read some Dan and Phil fan fictions out there for you guys. That should be fun. Oh Lord. Just let me sink into the wolf blanket. So anyways, guys, I hope you are enjoying the story so far, and if you are, please leave a like, subscribe if you want to today for more, and leave a comment down below what you guys are thinking about the story so far, because I know my voice can... Sometimes when I'm reading the fanfictions, like, my voice is so off tune, and I hate it because I try to like fix my voice before a reading. I can't even English. So, still, I hope you guys are enjoying the stories. Just leave a comment down below what you guys are thinking about it, or your thoughts on it. Still can't English. So yeah, if you like it, leave a like, subscribe, comment down below what you guys think of the story so far, and give your opinions on what you think about me doing Dan and Phil fanfictions. Because personally, I'm honestly excited because this should be interesting. Anyways, guys, I hope you'll enjoy, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.